floor amendment number 8 by Uresti.
Chair recognizes Senator Uresti to explain Floor Amendment 8.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. As you know, I'm very concerned about some of the unintended consequences of requiring all abortion facilities to meet the minimum standards for ambulatory surgery centers. Specifically, I'm concerned about the impact this will have on access to preventative care for rural Texas women. In spite of the fact that these facilities are deemed abortion facilities, the fact of the matter is that 97% of the services provided at these facilities have nothing to do with abortion and are preventative in nature. Services such as blood pressure screening, annual exams, pap smears, and screening for diabetes. In order to ensure that these rural and South Texas facilities remain open and are able to continue providing this preventative care to patients who are often underserved, my amendment would exempt facilities that are located more than 50 miles from any abortion facility. Without my amendment, the bill as currently drafted will disproportionately affect women in far east, far west, and far south Texas. And I'll use my own district as an example. According to the Department of State Health Services website, there are no ASCs in any part of Senate District 19 with the exception of Bexar County. And remember, I have 19 counties in my district. And I don't think I have to tell you that Senate District 19 covers quite a large amount of territory, close to 35,000 square miles. In fact, when you look at my district with the provisions of this bill applied, the hardship that it would impose on rural women to obtain care becomes even more apparent. And let me just give you some facts. A woman living in Ozona, in Crockett County, would have to travel over 3.5 hours and over 230 miles to San Antonio to receive services. Right now, their closest care center is in San Angelo, only an hour and a half away, and 104 miles. A woman living in Sanderson, Texas, in Terrell County, would have to travel over 4.5 hours, over 300 miles, in order to obtain these services. In comparison, today the closest care center is in Midland, only 3 hours and 185 miles away. A woman living in Alpine, Texas, in Brewster County, would have to travel a little over 5.5 hours and drive over 350 miles in order to get to San Antonio. Compare that to the most accessible center right now, which is in Midland, and only an hour and a half and 90 miles away. And it gets even worse, members. Under House Bill 2, women living in Balmorea, Texas, and Pecos, Texas, some of the furthermost cities in my district, would have to travel over 6 hours and over 400 miles in order to get to San Antonio, the closest center with the services that they need. These statistics are staggering, seeing as today a woman in Pecos would only have to drive under 3 hours and only 210 miles to El Paso. That's half the time, but if this bill passes, those centers in El Paso will close as well. So, Mr. President and members, all women should have preventative health care facilities that are affordable and accessible. This amendment would simply keep in place trusted preventative health care for all Texas women. So if we are truly concerned about the health care of women, then you will vote for my amendment. And with that, Mr. President and members, I move to adopt floor amendment number 8.
Thank you, Senator Uresti. The chair recognizes Senator Hager on Floor Amendment 8.
Thank you, Senator Uresti, and thank you. I think, if I remember correctly, we brought this amendment in committee as well, and we had a good discussion about it. And I recall you were mentioning how you have concerns and with this amendment for a distance, but also, if I recall correctly, in your district today, unfortunately, in a lot of the rural parts, you may not have the same quality of care for a whole host of services in your district other than San Antonio. And you don't have abortion clinics in those portions of the district, so those people today are having to drive further in. You did mention the 2 in El Paso, whatever happens with those 2 clinics decide to do. But I think that this substantially takes away from the piece of legislation, and with all due respect, thank you for your advocacy tonight, and I would ask that we table this amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Uresti to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, if the bill passes, it simply exacerbates an existing problem in not only my district, but in many parts of Texas. Senator Duncan has the largest district geographically now. Senator Seliger has a huge district. Many of you do. And so this bill will exacerbate the problem. I'm not talking about for abortions. I'm talking about the fact that 97% of the services that are provided in these clinics do many other things, preventative care. Senator Nelson talks every session about we need to do more about preventative care. She mentioned it in the committee the other night. And this bill follows what she has been saying, what many of us have been saying. And if we truly want to do something to help women obtain those services, all it's saying is we're going to have a 50-mile exemption. That's all it's saying. So with that, members, I respectfully ask that you vote no on the motion to table.
Thank you, Senator. Members, the issue before us is the motion to table by Senator Hager, opposed by Senator Uresti. The Secretary will call the roll.
Birdwell, Campbell, Corona, Davis, Dool, Duncan, Ellis, Eltife, Estes, Frazier, Garcia, Hancock, Hager, Hinojosa, Huffman, Lucio, Nelson, Nichols, Patrick, Paxton, Rodriguez, Schwartner, Seliger, Taylor, Uresti, Vandepute, Watson, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
Members, there being 19 ayes and 11 nays, the motion to table is sustained. Chair leaves out floor amendment number 9 by Senator Davis. The Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 9 by Davis.
Chair recognizes Senator Davis to explain floor amendment 9.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this amendment seeks to address an issue that we learned about actually during the Health and Human Services Committee hearing with regard to the frequency of inspections of these facilities. What we were told by the Department of State Health Services was that abortion facilities today routinely have and are required actually to have unannounced yearly inspections. And I think we would all agree that that's important and it's a good idea that that's happening, particularly in response to some of the issues that were raised by members on the floor today about why we need even greater standards for these clinics. Unbelievably, though, ambulatory surgical centers actually don't have any required inspections. And in fact, to the extent they are inspected, they're announced inspections, and they occur every 3 to 6 years. And even further, the Department of State Health Services informed us that because of staffing shortages, routinely today, those 5 only get inspected once every 6 years. Now, members, if what we truly care about is making sure that we know that incidence reports are being filed, that complications from procedures are being filed, that these facilities are clean, that they're functioning with the kind of safety equipment that should be there, that they're functioning with the kind of medical personnel that are required to be there, that they actually are setting up hotlines, 24/7 hotlines for women to call if they have problems, are there. All of these are requirements in the standards for abortion facilities today. And given that that is the case, I can't imagine that any of us would think it was a good idea for these to be inspected less frequently once they are now required to meet the standards of an ambulatory surgical center. And with that, I would move adoption of floor amendment number 9.
Chair recognizes Senator Hager on floor amendment number 9.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also had during some of that testimony that ASCs are also inspected by JCO, and I remember the testimony, I was trying to remember if it was Dr. Romberg was one of them. The questions were whether a yearly inspection is necessary, and if I remember correctly, he said that that was overzealous, but that you didn't have to have such a yearly inspection, and I don't think that it's necessarily the annual inspection or every 6 months or year and a half that is the quality of standard of care, but the fact that you raise those standards. And so with that, and all due respect, I would ask that we table floor amendment number 9.
Aye. Chair recognizes Senator Davis on floor amendment number 9 to close.
You know, members, I don't know how anyone who has argued that there needs to be an increased safety standard for abortion facilities in the state of Texas today can, with a straight face, defend a vote that says we don't need to inspect them every year, that somehow that's overzealous. And at the same time, we want to defend the fact that it's going to be terribly important for women's health that they have increased surgery room sizes, that they have increased hallway widths, that they have an airflow system, firewalls, showers, male and female locker rooms, janitor closets. How in the world can we attempt to suggest that those requirements somehow do a better job of making sure that women are treated with a standard of care that assures their safety than annual inspections of these facilities? And how in the world can we reject an amendment knowing that today, because of staffing shortages in the Department of State Health Services, these are only getting inspected every 6 years? Members, I don't know how anyone defends a vote that says no to this amendment, and I would respectfully ask that you vote no on the motion to table floor amendment number 9.
Thank you, Senator Davis. Members, the issue before us is the motion to table by Senator Hager, opposed by Senator Davis. The Secretary will call the roll.
Birdwell, Campbell, Corona, Davis, Duell, Duncan, Ellis, Eltife, Estes, Frazier, Garcia, Hancock, Hager, Hinojosa, Huffman, Lucio, Nelson, Nichols, Patrick, Paxton, Rodriguez, Schwertner, Soliger, Taylor, Uresti, Vandepute, Watson, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
Members, there being 18 ayes and 12 nays, the motion to table is sustained. Chair lays out floor amendment number 10 by Senator Rodriguez. The Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 10 by Rodriguez.
Chair recognizes Senator Rodriguez to explain floor amendment 10.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, currently the Health and Safety Code includes a provision under the Voluntary and Informed Consent subchapter, which states that a physician must inform a woman of the possibility of increased risk of breast cancer following an induced abortion and the natural protective effect of a completed pregnancy in avoiding breast cancer. This statement is medically inaccurate. According to every mainstream medical organization, including the National Cancer Institute, the American Cancer Society, and the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, no evidence exists to support a causal link between an induced abortion and breast cancer. Now, we've been talking a lot about the safety and welfare of women that are seeking legal abortion services. This deals with the information that is provided to women that might be seeking these services. In 2009, the Committee on Gynecologic Practice of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists concluded that more rigorous recent studies demonstrate no causal relationship between induced abortion and a subsequent increase in breast cancer risk. And as published on the website for the National Cancer Institute, major findings from these recent studies include the following. Women who have had an induced abortion have the same risk of breast cancer as other women. Women who have had a spontaneous abortion or a miscarriage have the same risk of breast cancer as other women. Cancers other than breast cancer also appear to be unrelated to a history of induced or spontaneous abortions. In addition, even though Section 171.014 of the Health and Safety Code requires the Department of State Health Services to use the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists as a resource in developing the content of the informed consent materials, the false causal link statement is still included in the current A Woman's Right to Know pamphlet. Now, this is an official state publication put out by the department, and it is full of inaccurate information. By providing a woman with medically inaccurate materials, the state of Texas has substantially reduced the ability of a woman to understand the risks, the benefits, and the alternatives of care. The floor amendment removes this medically inaccurate language. Members, Texas women deserve to be presented with the most recent and accurate medical science that we have. Mr. President, I move adoption.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. The chair recognizes Senator Hager on floor amendment number 10.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. This bill is not trying to change any of this language at all. I did not hear any testimony as to this amendment, and it's not something that I'm trying to change in the bill, so we have not had testimony on it. And with that, I've heard the sites that you've referenced, but with that, I would ask that we table the amendment, being that I did not hear testimony and it has not come up before, so I'm not as familiar with it.
Chair recognizes Senator Rodriguez to close.
Senator Hager and members, all we have heard about throughout this whole debate and in the committee hearings is that this bill is intended to provide more safety and more protections for women who are seeking safe legal abortions. Every single provision of this bill, according to your statements and others who support it, say that that's what this bill is intended to do. And if we mean to do that, to provide more safety and promote the welfare of women in these circumstances, then it seems to me we need to look at all the other factors that have a bearing on that. And if our own State Department of Health Services is putting out a publication, A Woman's Right to Know, that contains medically inaccurate information, as has been determined by many organizations and interested parties, then it seems to me we ought to be supportive of eliminating language from our health and safety code that doesn't provide that kind of accurate information and that provides misleading information. So for that reason, I would ask you and the members, I would ask the members to please vote no on the motion to table.
Members, the issue before us is the motion to table by Senator Hager, opposed by Senator Rodriguez. The Secretary will call the roll.
Birdwell, Campbell, Corona, Davis, Jewell, Duncan, Ellis, Eltife, Estes, Frazier, Garcia, Hancock, Hager, Hinojosa, Huffman, Lucio, Nelson, Nichols, Patrick, Paxton, Rodriguez, Schwertner, Sulliger, Taylor, Uresti, Vandepute, Watson, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
Members, there being 18 ayes and 12 nays, the motion to table is sustained. The chair lays out floor amendment number 11 by Senator Rodriguez. The Secretary will read the amendment.